A warm welcome on behalf of the Roundtable Human Rights in Tourism. It's been a while since we held our last webinar, and I am delighted that so many of you have found their way to us. That definitely shows the relevance of the topic. My name is Katharina Stechel, and as always, it is a great pleasure for me to host this session as your moderator today. Like my two wonderful guests that you already see on the slide here, I have kind of a double role in the session today, but I'll come to that a little bit later. I would also like to warmly introduce my colleague Yara Schreiber. She's the coordinator of the Roundtable, and she is working behind the scenes to ensure everything runs smoothly. Let me draw your attention to our newsletter so that you don't miss any exciting events like this one in the future. We will post a link to our newsletter. If you haven't done that, make sure to register. And of course, I will also like to draw your attention to our website, where you find a whole range of exciting offers and resources. We are also already posting the link to a short and anonymous survey. We would kindly request you to fill that out after the webinar. It really helps us to improve the quality of our webinars, and also to know what you think of what we've just presented. And since we have such a diverse and big group of people, I would like to briefly come to the housekeeping rules of today's event and a concise introduction of the Roundtable before we go into medias res. So this webinar will be recorded. The webinar is designed as an expert talk. So I have a few questions prepared for our guests that might be a pressing issue. All of you are automatically muted. So we kindly ask you to post your questions and comments in the chat. If you want to ask a question anonymously, then just send a direct message to my colleague Yara Schreiber, and she will pass it on to me. And today our topic might be a bit sensitive at one point or another, so we highly encourage you to ask questions, to share your expertise, and to engage in a dialogue. But at the same time, please remember that this is a professional setting, and all comments and questions should be relevant to the topic and respectful at all times. Okay, so now to the Roundtable. The Roundtable is a multi-stakeholder initiative founded in 2012 as a nonprofit association. We are the largest sector dialogue on human rights and tourism, with currently 34 members from 6 countries. As you can see, different interest groups such as tour operator, travel associations, multiplier, institutions, civil society, and certifiers. Membership is open to all interested stakeholders. So if you're interested in a membership, feel free to contact us. And the Roundtable seeks to address human rights issues according to the UN Guiding Principles. We raise awareness, we promote best practices, we initiate pilot projects, and we create a forum for dialogue and for collaboration between stakeholders. That already brings me to my next point, talking about events and pilot projects. I warmly invite you to join us on the 19th of April. In this webinar, Yara Schreiber, who I just introduced, will showcase the new and freely available online destination risk map and discuss how this tool can support tourism businesses to start their assessment on human rights risks. The interactive risk map is based on 13 international reputable indices that comprehensively cover various human rights topics with relevance to tourism, and currently provides up-to-date information on 36 countries and the human rights situation within these countries from the perspective of European tour operators. Registration is already open. If you have registered for our newsletter, you will also receive the official invitation, but we are also already going to post a link for the registration in the chat. So here you already see it, our guideline. This is like the first glimpse that you can catch. And yeah, maybe let me say one or two sentences about the creation of the guideline. Last year, following a request from our membership, we established a working group on tourism in politically challenging countries. And in the first meeting, or in the first meetings, we realized how complex the topic was. And honestly, we often went around in circles. Like, should it be a 10-point plan or a detailed analysis of different country-specific dictatorships? And neither of that seemed realistic. So therefore, in the course of the project, we decided to write a guideline with the tour operators of our working group, which comes from practice, is made for practice, and has a general validity, so without naming countries. So what is the guideline and what is it not? Let me showcase that with a little analogy. Some of you might remember Douglas Adams' novel, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. When the computer deep thought is asked the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything, the answer is 42. And deep thought points out that the answer seems meaningless because the beings who constructed it never knew what the question was. So I surely don't want us to compare to a supercomputer or a science fiction book, but it kind of hits the right nerve because there are no easy one-fits-all solutions to highly complex questions. And I would really love to tell you that this guideline is the recipe book to tick off a list and then know how and whether to offer travel to oppressive states. But it's not that easy. Every country, every region, every government is different. Every company is different as well. So there may be various ethical, political, and also economic considerations that need to be taken into account. And we are not interested in like finger pointing or condemnations. Ultimately, any decision should be based on careful evaluations of the facts and the potential consequences, as well as a commitment to upholding human rights and ethical standards. The guideline, as you can already see here, is really concise. It's not meant to be like a heavy academic thesis, but a guide that you can use in your daily work. So to come back to the analogy with 42 as an answer, the document does not necessarily provide answers, but it can help to ask the right questions. So let's take a closer look at the guideline that you already see here. I hope that you can see the guideline. If not, let me know. So as already mentioned a few times, it's an online guideline. We'll have a few onboarding points here, like an introduction, the foundation, which is of course the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, a disclaimer where we again explain why we choose the term oppressive, and then we have these fundamental thoughts as a starting point, and here the possible fields of action. Let me mention that this is not a comprehensive assessment. So if you know our other work, you might realize, oops, there are a lot of human rights missing, and that is kind of on purpose, because specifically for this guideline, we tried to focus on the areas where we thought the tour operators might have the biggest leverage, which at the same time means that we left out other human rights risks that of course belong to a comprehensive analysis, but are just not part of this specific guideline. In the possible fields of action, you always can use this little hook to unwrap it. And there you always have a short description of what we mean. Then you have key questions and a list of action steps. And then always a good practice example. We have a few downloads and also additional links. And what is also new is that you can click on print publication, and then you get a PDF document of the publication. It might vary from browser to browser and also from printer to printer, but just that you know, we also have a little instruction of how to best print the publication. And that is, yeah, a short glimpse into what you can expect from the guideline. Okay, back to the presentation, and we will share the link at the end of the webinar. 2 points more for us. This guideline is not the end, but and also not the solution, but it is the beginning of a conversation and a way of dealing with the issue. And was the main reason for us why we made it an online guideline instead of printing it, so that it can grow steadily. But now to my guests. I certainly don't have to introduce them, at least for our German-speaking audience. Manfred is CEO of Hauser Exkursionen, and Ruth is Quality and Sustainability Manager at Studiosus Reisen. If you want to have more information on their bio, you can find that on our website. And now it is my great pleasure to invite Manfred and Ruth to the virtual stage. And in the meantime, one crucial hint, the three of us have, as I mentioned before, kind of a double role here, which cannot be separated from each other and should also not be mixed at the same time. The three of us developed this guideline together, but today I am here primarily as a neutral moderator, and Manfred and Ruth are primarily here in their role as tour operators. This is important because they will share much of their personal experience and also their expertise. Still, these were not always necessarily the basis for the guideline, which in the end means the two speak for themselves and for their companies, but not necessarily for the guideline or the roundtable. But enough of the disclaimers and prefaces. Ruth, Manfred, great pleasure to have you here. And I would like to start with a question that addresses the both of you. So what was your personal motivation to actively participate first in the internal working group on the topic and then in the following elaboration of the guideline? And maybe we'll start with Ruth.
Yes, hello, and thank you for the opportunity of exchange on this widely discussed topic. Welcome all together. I'm confronted with this topic since I work in tourism, and this is quite a long time. And also, there is the statement or the Studioso's mission statement that means our business, through our business, we want to build bridges across internal and external borders in terms of understanding foreign countries and their cultures. That means social responsible planning is a very important part of our business and of our tours. So we therefore have worldwide many different and also challenging destinations in our programs. And this again brings us back to the question how to deal with the different destinations. That's why the topic of the first workshop in 22 and the possibility to talk and exchange with colleagues working in the same business was very interesting for me. But it was just one meeting, and due to the lack of participants, there was no follow-up workshop, which is why I felt it was really necessary also to go on with this topic and have a closer look again. And the closer look then was the teamwork we had all together, the working together, and the today's launched guideline. And that was a lot of work and what a very good coming together. And you all see the result of it now. Thank you.
I can only give that back. I also highly enjoyed working with the two of you, and I'll hand over to Manfred.
Hello into the round, and thank you for giving us the chance to discuss this very important matter in this webinar session. Yeah, when the theme of the working group was announced in one of the roundtable meetings some times ago, I knew immediately that I wanted to be part of this group because this topic accompanied me since I started working at Hauser, which is also quite a long time. And Hauser always offered as an adventure to operator trips to precarious areas. And therefore, I was confronted from the beginning with the questions of balancing it out. So how to behave in these precarious situations and systems. So I thought I still want to learn. You never stop learning. And on the other hand, possibly contribute something to the guideline just from my practical experience.
I think learn and contribute is already a good point for my next question. Why do you think, and maybe I'll continue with Manfred, why do you think it was essential to provide guidance for the entire industry and not to address this topic internally? Because of course, every company is different, every company is structured different. So what's the benefit of having a guideline that addresses the whole industry?
Yeah, thank you. I had a very interesting development on this question. Since we started the working group, I talked to others about what we are doing and what the working group is all about in the last few months. And I have noticed two main positions in the reactions. On the one hand, I experienced a great need for orientation. For the own work. So how can I deal with this subject? And on the other side, also a kind of resignation in saying that we cannot do anything against the totalitarian system anyway. So, and I believe that we all feel this inner conflict of our conscience and should position ourselves more clearly here. So this is my learning to sum it up, to take a stand. And I think that's why it must be made public, because ignorance and still doing business as usual, this will be basically the greatest support for any regime. So that's why I think it's very important that to announce this and to address this to the branch and also to ourselves?
I think we already have our first comment in the chat, and it basically states, unfortunately, in oppressive countries, it is too risky for tourism businesses to even address political issues for their clients, not to mention staff. Otherwise, they might become targets for oppression as well. That is definitely a topic that we also touch in the guideline, but it might also contribute to what you just said, Manfred, about this resignation that you might feel that there is nothing you can do. Ruth, I would also like to let you answer the question why you think it was essential to provide the guidance, but I think this comment already shows why this guidance was important.
Well, concerning the question, the tourism industry provides worldwide travel into countries with very different forms of governmental and social structures. And at the same time, we are committed to the UN guiding principles. That means we offer travels worldwide, and as a tour operator, we have the due diligence towards all our stakeholders in the content of international travel. What we want is to meet people, putting people first. That's our slogan. But we also want to show our customers and bring them together with the people in the country, just to make the exchange possible, knowing more possible. The question how to deal with destinations where we have oppressive regimes is not a new question, but moved more in the foreground, I think. And it's more spoken about in the context of sustainability and human rights. That is a new, more important fact that we see during the last 3 years or more, but it is as it is. As I already said, we want to bring our guests closer to the country and closer to its people, and make the exchange possible with the people, not with the system. Putting people first is, yeah, that's the main direction we move on. They have, in order to do this responsible work, we have a lot of recommendations to follow, and this is not easy, and each business has to choose what to take into its decision, but it can be helpful to have recommendations, and that might be a guideline, not as an instruction manual, but it might be helpful for planning, as a planning tool. And that's what I think is important, and was for me important also to work with this group, with the team for these guidelines.
Already connecting to what you just said, for us it was clear that the guideline is go beyond boycott. That was something that we already discussed in our first meeting, because if we look at the world today, also the new report from Amnesty International was launched. So if we say, okay, we don't travel to countries with a difficult political system, then we're going to lose more than half of the world. And that this is not an option was clear for all of us at the beginning. And Ruth, you already mentioned a few points that more or less brings me to my next question, because we just thought that the guideline is really concise. You just touched on that in your previous answer. And I know that it was also a pressing issue for you, or like a request that this guideline is really short. And maybe you can briefly describe why you think that was important, especially when the guide is used by product managers or sustainability managers within a company.
Well, that's a question I have. Well, the point that I'm thinking and talking about quite often, as we have a lot of exchanges within colleagues also in our business. Some years ago, we already published for the roundtable guidelines on this topic. And I also worked on this related to practice, this paper was too long, too text heavy, and was not really oriented towards the daily circumstances for product manager especially. And these colleagues of mine clearly signaled to me, well, that they really don't have any time for such doctoral thesis. So that was for me the reason to get my point across this time. We need short, precise, and practical recommendations as a working aid and as a decision support. That's, I think, was for me very important.
I think our audience can relate to that. I mean, I realized that in my day-to-day work, there was so many highly interesting publications, for example, from the UN, and I would love to have the time to sit there for days and just read through, I don't know, a 300 pages document. And our publications were not even close to that length, right? I mean, there were maybe a few pages or 30 pages, but I totally agree that it might still, I mean, the longer a document is, the higher is the barrier to watch and read that on a day-to-day basis. So you have seen the guideline, you've seen a glimpse of the print version, so it's around 5 pages, and you basically can skip the first one with the disclaimer and the foundation. So in the end, you have like 2 to 3 pages with action steps and with fields of action. So that is definitely, I would say, manageable to include that in a regular day. And for somebody like Manfred, who is actually involved in all the business processes of his company, we'll go directly into medias res. Like, what uncertainties do you see in dealing with offering travel to oppressive regimes, and how do you address that, like, within your company? I'm sure you have a lot of examples. Maybe you can give us one concrete one of how you dealt with the topic and what happened behind the scenes.
Yeah. So first of all, I think you can really wrap it up with the summary of ask the right questions. So I think if we can support the product managers and the companies with that, then we have already won. But I want also to make clear that we never can have 100% certainty considering this decision-making process. But for me, there is one decisive factor, and this is local relationships. So do we have trustworthy people with whom we can work on site and who also seem ethical, credible to us? So this is a very important process we have to go into, and this you can do by questioning. Do they also allow the involved persons within the value chain to participate? So how is the participation factor? So this can also take, sometimes it must take, or it can take place under the radar of the official politics. Like you asked for examples, we have done it in Tibet in the 80s and 90s from the last century. So we just worked on relationship and not on official connections. Or like in Algeria, when we had the personal relationships with the local Tuaregs. And so we didn't ask the official institutions how we can do it, but we knew exactly, and we were 100% sure that we have, with these people, we can do it. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. So, and I think this is a conscious question you have to ask yourself as a company every time. So internally, we often have this discussion and wage in the different sides. In the beginning of the process, the team does not always agree on which country should be offered or which possibly even be postponed. So this must be discussed openly in the team. And we see also the personal beliefs of the colleagues. and on the other side, the company's interest, which we have to bring together. So this opinion building process, I would name it, must be moderated and matched with criteria similar to those we have now defined in this paper, and that's why I like the paper. I find the 4 criteria we have defined now: the local value creation, the employment issues, and the empowerment of the locals, and also the communication to the travelers, as Ruth said before. So these are the 4, I would say, key factors we have to consider and discuss, and to go into the depths to measure it also. And then this gives us an excellent compass and also a checklist and an analysis tool, which we can ultimately come to a decision finally. And a current example is our assessment in Saudi Arabia. The pressure in the market is very great at the moment, so to participate immediately, because there is a real hype at the moment to offer Saudi Arabia. And you see every week, every day, you see webinars and promotions and everything, also big show and ITB. So the pressure is there to be not left on this success story. And nevertheless, we have decided to go through this path of relationships, questioning, exploring before we offer anything. So, and after long search, we found a partner who really shares our values and implements them in the office, in his own network in the country. And just a small example for, he told me that the quota of women working in his office is about 70%. And they have also rules for equal payment. And a cultural thing or religious thing like wearing a hijab, it's up to the ladies, it's up to the women in the office, there's no rule about that. So, and this also respecting the different personal convictions. So, and I think this is also important how he works in the field with the guides, with the lodge owners, with the drivers, etc. So, and now we are close to a decision making. If we can now be really convinced that it's within our world of values and philosophy, that we also can offer a trip to this, I would say, difficult country.
Yeah, you touched a pretty hot iron, I would say, with Saudi Arabia. But of course, like a really, really pressing issue that might also be a very current topic for you as an audience, how and whether to offer travels to a country like that. And it gives me, it makes me actually really happy that even you who were part of designing that guideline also can use it now in order to like go through the different steps. For example, under empowerment of locals, we have a key question, which is where do I have to play by the rules, and how can I subvert the regime to enhance local communities without putting anyone in danger? That was something that you just mentioned in your analysis. And of course, yeah, making contacts with local partners. I talked to another tour operator who focuses on political study tours, and they said for us it is normally the other way around. We don't decide, we go to country X, but we have a really, really, really good contact with somebody in country X, and then we decide to go there because we know that we already have the like in-deep knowledge that we need. And of course, that is pretty easy if you are a very small and niche tour operator, and maybe that's already what some of the people in our audience might also already think. Manfred, you mentioned that you and your company, also your staff is already really aware, but that might not be the case for every tourism company. And this contact with local people also brings me to my next question for Ruth. So we just said, like, every autocracy, every dictatorship, but also every country, or even every region within a country is different. And we just said that there can be no one-size-fits-all solution. But as Manfred already touched on, it is even more crucial than to find local people and to find what levels there are for you as a tour operator and what supports them. And I know that you have a decades-long history of engaging with locals, so maybe you can touch on that.
Well, the motto of our tours is to ensure to encounter a country with its people and their culture, and this is the base. Tourism should be, from our view, a bridge for tolerance, but also for openness, and we want to fulfill this mission of responsibility and also want to meet the expectation of our guests. They want to see and know a country, even if it's a critical country, and it's always the decision, or more or less also the decision of our customers, if they book the country or if not. And this is a very this is a leverage also. They decide if we can offer the tour or not. If we look back if we look on the bookings, more or less. But what is why we regularly reassess also our destinations, regularly exchange also with our business and project partners, from whom we know for as long as we are working in business, and this is nearly 70 years, that they have working independently and also ethically are on the same way as we are. And this is the foundation for our socially responsible tours that we are always thinking of when planning. And we know, they know, our partners know how we work, and we know how they work. And if we see critical issues, we seek dialogue, of course, and this we do for a very long time, and for more than 25 years. We have this dialogue, these round tables we are always organizing if we see problems concerned to or connected to tourism in the different destinations. And we sit together with partners as well as with locals involved in tourism. We listen to them. We ask them where they have their difficulties, and we listen what they want to say and what they have to say. This fosters trust, but we also gain more insight into local conditions, and that helps us a lot to plan our tours, but also together to plan with the locals and to respect their needs and probably also their wishes, if it is possible. Well, if we can bring that all together. And this is good for our programs and brings a benefit, and also respect to the destination and the locals. Bilateral talks are always are normal for us. If we see the need, we take the phone, we build up a meeting, a digital meeting, or we have our business trips. We support also and visit projects that we are doing with the Studiosus Foundation in many countries, and also the exchange with our NGO partners or with NGOs in the destinations is another valuable information option. That's these are very important tools we have on site to all the other regulations that we have. And of course, we have a lot of discussions within our with my colleagues here in Munich, where we are. They bring all their experience in. But we find always the common solution. And what we see is it's the people of the country that is important to know how they feel, to give them also the possibility of openness and giving information also outside to our customers. And our customers are those who bring the information back into the country and where others talk about. I mean, another important role is the Studiosus tour guide. They are all trained. We have a certified training where all our Studiosus tour guides have to do. Even those who work in countries where only local or national tour guides are allowed to work. But our Studiosus tour guides know the local country and the people, as well as also the culture and the requirements of the guests, and speak their language. And in many places, we also have local guides additional coming with the groups or with our guests, and being in dialogue with with stakeholders is a very helpful tool also. Yeah, and of course, in the countries, our partners know that we are always looking in the fair working conditions, as Manfred already said, because this also generates higher satisfaction among local employees, and is also a benefit for our guests and for us in the working together. And well, we are based on the ILO working labor standards and have included clauses on human rights responsibility in our contracts. And well, that's our other tools we are working on, but these are already the recommendations you find in our guidelines. There are some possibilities. You can go and meet people and come together and find the right persons.
Well, what a comprehensive answer. I was actually trying to make notes of everything you said, but you mentioned so many important points, which of course also shows the immense expertise that you have. And maybe let me quickly wrap it up and again mention the most important points that you touched on. One thing was benefit. And I really like that, because we often hear that people or stakeholders might still see human rights as something that is additional, that is an add-on, that is doing something good, like in a sense of a charity. And with what you said, like paying workers fairly and then have a higher satisfaction of workers and guests, all of that contributes to what we always say, that there is a business case and that you actually benefit from having these long-lasting relationships. That was the first point that I wanted to wrap up. The second one is the high relevance of tour guides. You've mentioned that, and we also have that in our guideline in various sections. So one is, for example, choose tour guides with in-depth knowledge and language skills in the respective country. Train the tour guides, especially. I think this is something that we cannot mention often enough. The tour guides are your link between the country, between your customer. They know the situation on site. So they are a highly important source for you to get an idea of what it really looks like on the ground. And at the same time, they stand for your company. Even if it doesn't matter if you hire them or if you don't hire them, but if something goes wrong, it doesn't even have to be in a regime, but if something with the tour guide goes wrong, people will blame you as a company and not blame the tour guide. So it makes sense to train them. And I also, like, the third point that I wanted to wrap up from what you just said is the customers as a valuable source of income. It has two coins. We touch upon that in the guideline as well. Of course, you need to ensure the safety of your customers, in the sense of preparing them, especially, for example, if it comes to LGBTQ plus rights, if you have customers who are in that group and they travel to an oppressive regime where being queer might be an issue, that is something where customers need to be aware of before going there. And at the same time, also customers have kind of a leverage that they can use, they can positively impact, and how to do that, you'll find all of that in our guideline. And how to positively impact, that has also to do something with local value creation. And as my next question to Manfred, we realized in the development of the guideline, but also before, it is extremely difficult to measure local value creation, right? It's like how much money really stays with the population, and how can we, how does it not flow to the oppressive regime, is a question where you don't have any data. Of course, you probably know with the visa fee that goes directly to the regime, but how you can assess who benefits from foreign exchange, and how you can support that as much money as possible stays with the people and not with the government. Do you have any answers to that question, Manfred?
Yeah, but I just want to come back to Ruth's answer for one second, because it belongs to the answer. I think I can understand all what Ruth said. I think we're following quite similar paths of how we monitor and how we find out what we can do. And especially for us as a tracking operator and hiking operator, we have this exclusive chance to visit a country on eye level, because we are walking. So we come into a village and we see the people, we sit down and we have time to share their experiences. And sometimes we just start a talk about how they see their country, how they see their system also. And we also tell them how we live, our circumstances, because we do not want to transport the wrong pictures and patterns, like, oh, these are always the rich Westerners, and so they have everything and we have nothing. So, and I think this kind of exchange is very important to have these intercultural bridges, as Ruth said, and the tour leaders, of course, they play a key role. And so I think the philosophy must be more and more in tourism to come from this shareholder value thinking to a stakeholder value thinking, because then I think we can be quite sure that we are on the right way. So, and this is also our vision, that we want to make the world a better place through our trips. So about measurement, so this sounds nice and philosophic, but you asked about measurement, but I think both are close together. I think there are also already implemented instruments about measuring things. And of course, all of you might know the supplier code of conduct, which is more kind of an ethical framework, but you can come back to, can refer to it if there is a conflict, like Ruth described before. You can say, okay, we have a common framework, so why is this not happening in your work? So this is, I think it's not so unimportant as sometimes it is seen. And of course, we have the corporate social responsibility process and certification. And with this process and certification, we collect quite a lot of data, quality data and also quantitative data. So, and with this data, we can work and we can do an improvement program. We can come back to our partners. And so also we are measuring the percentage, how much money flows into the supply chain. So how much money stays in the country and not in state-controlled organizations. So this is, I think, there are a few measurement possibilities. And also we have measurement in the feedback, because we have tour leader reports, which we can also analyze and say, okay, how often do we get these feedbacks from our tour leaders? And of course, we have the clients. Every client gets a feedback formula, and if we see there are some problems coming up in a country, in a system, then we can react on that, and we can go into negotiations with our partners and improve things. And I think finally, I would say we always have to be aware that we are in a permanent process. We never finish. So it's a permanent improvement process. And I think also in our document, it's the constant dripping breaks the stone. I think that's a very good motto for this paper we can follow.
Yeah, Ruth, I saw you nodding a lot. I don't know if you want to add anything. For me, that sums it up perfectly.
No, as I already said, we reassess and monitor the countries, and it's a permanent process. That's is, I think, crucial. We can't say, well, we travel there and it has always been well. Everything has been going well, so why don't continue like that? We do have a look at the points again and again, and keep this and stay in this process. And this is very important, but also involve all the stakeholders and work on eye level and meet on eye level with the partners, also the project partners, and try to get as more as possible information in a continuous dialogue with the destinations and the countries. And there are a lot of possibilities to find the way of staying in contact without being on a difficult path, you know, or being and because it is important that the partners also and the people we meet are on the safe side. And but there are so many possibilities. I mean, if we work for a long time in this business and have a very long partnerships, and in many countries we don't travel anymore. We have been traveling in the 50s, in the 60s already, and then it was not possible anymore because of different reasons. And then we retook the travels, or well, it's just a process, as I said. Yeah. Well, what is important for us also is tourism shouldn't be misused for propaganda purposes, and the safety of all participants is important, as I already said. And this is also the criteria for countries we travel to. So countries that dictate the program of visits or do not allow or control contracts with local people are definitely not in our programs. Yeah, and what is important is really the fair working together without political influence. Yeah. And what for us also, and I think that is for you, Manfred, important too, our customers should always have the possibility to get their own and independent picture of the country. There are many tools we can provide that. And this is also a very important fact for our tours. At the same time, well, let me say that at the end, or additionally, at the same time, our customers want to enjoy their time in the country on their holidays. That means we as a tour operator have to provide everything that customers wish to have: sustainable travel or the sustainable tours, but they don't want to do too much from their side for it. So it is our duty and our business to make this tour exactly as the, well, social responsible and sustainable too, as our part, and that's the way we can offer that our customers. Thank you.
Manfred, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think our customers could be the ambassadors of a more differentiated picture. They bring it back to our culture, and we can break down some prejudices which are very well established in our society as well. So I think it's an important role of tourism at all, but especially in this more precarious and critical systems, to see it's not only one system, it's people. So that's why putting people first is the right slogan, the right motto. And I just have a practical recommendation for the product managers at the end. So you can use these questions in our paper to make a so-called SWOT analysis. So you can put it to answer it to strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And if you go through the questions and you fill in the SWOT analysis, I think you will get a very good picture of how to decide in your company, in your product, to move on for the next steps.
I quickly come back to what you just said, Manfred, because at one point in the guideline, we actually say tourism is also a window to the world. And I actually like that picture because it's not a mirror, it's a window, which means it's see-through from both sides. So not only the people who come to a country can learn something, but also the people who live in a destination. So it's this exchange and this intercultural exchange that has also a high potential. Before we wrap it up, we have just one question left in the chat that I would like to read out. What are your guidelines for countries that criminalize LGBTQ+? How do you ensure fair conditions for LGBTQ+ workers on site? It's a little bit specific, I would say. Let me maybe quickly touch on that. I would say, of course, if you have countries like just in Uganda, where one of the hardest queer laws against queers was just coming into parliament, that is probably a point where also a tour operator is out of his reach and out of his leverage. As soon as we really talk about criminalization, in a lot of countries, it's more that they're excluded from society and are like a marginalized group. So in that, as long as that is the case, you have a leverage as an outsider or as a foreigner to hire people, to hire LGBTQ+ people, to give them a platform, and also then at the same time to train your staff. We also have that in the guideline in order to reduce prejudice and to also show a positive example that you can actually benefit from a diverse hiring. That would be my response, but I quickly give it back to Ruth and Manfred, and I'll ask you to keep it short because we're almost out of time.
Well, this is up to our partners in the destination. We ensure that the partners, also the businesses we work with, the accommodation and whatever, that there is no discrimination. This is in our contracts, and no discrimination, and fair working together and fair pay for everyone. And so there shouldn't be made any differences. We try to control that via our contracts, our reviews, and also by bilateral communication. And that's
Manfred, I hope you can agree on that. I
Yes.
really don't want to cut you off, but as we are as we already have 12 o'clock, I would just quickly share the link of our publication in the chat, that you have it with you. We're also gonna post it on our website after this webinar. Before you all leave, a quick reminder, please fill in the anonymous survey. That is really, really important for us. Also specifically for this topic, we know it brings a lot of uncertainties with it. So it would be very crucial for us to see your feedback on the guideline and also on the survey. you see everything in the chat again. Please fill that out. As I said, it only takes like 2 minutes. It's very brief. If you have any other comments, feel also free to drop us an email. I leave the last words to you, but I really already want to thank our audience for being here. I know it was a lot of input. The topic is highly complex. It has so many layers, and we really hope that we at least could make things a little clearer. And with that, I would say like 30 seconds max each. Ruth, Manfred, the stage is yours. Once again, thank you very much for being here. And I leave you with the last words.
Well, I hope very much that the guideline we worked on and that is launched today is helpful for many of you. It's just a guideline, but helping or giving guide for your decisions. At the end, it's everyone and every business who has decided for itself. But if there are any questions, we are, of course, willing to answer them via the round table. Or if you want to, you can also have a direct contact to me. Thank you for listening and wishing you a good time.
Yeah, I fully agree to Ruth and Katharina, and I think it was very important to start with this paper and the guideline, and it's I think at the end we should see that it's a start. So it should be followed up, it should be developed, and I think, but it's also very important that we take a stand. So we should not resignate, we should not look away, we should really take a stand, a clear position. And then I think we can work also with these difficult circumstances, and we can continue and improve it. And so this is my hope, that it is the starting point of a development, how to deal with these really critical systems and oppressive systems, and how to, let's say, undermine them. So.
Wonderful. Thanks again. Make sure to register for the newsletter, and hopefully see you on the 19th of April for the launch of our destination risk map, which of course goes a little bit into the same direction. So hopefully that's interesting for you. And I would say that's a wrap. Thank you, everybody, and hope to see you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.